Welcome to the Ed Show. I'm Ed Pons, and let's talk about it. Our guest today, Mr. Charles Terry and his wife, Jeanette Moore Terry. And they're going to be talking about the history of the MC Moore case against the Tangipahoa Parish School Board. It's been 50 years since Mr. Moore filed that case, and this case has been ongoing ever since, except for a brief period of time when it lay dominant, and the NAACP stepped in and reactivated the case, and it's been ongoing ever since. And the Moore family has been out there with it. Mr. Terry, can you tell me something about your father-in-law when he filed his suit?
Yes, Mr. Pons, the Mr. MC Moore, who was a resident of Hammond for about 30 years, he and his wife had a total of 15 children. And his oldest daughter, Fannie Moore, had attended Greenville Park Colored School, graduated from there, and went on to Southern University. And after getting to Southern University in 1956, she was on academic probation. And Mr. Moore was upset because he knew that Fannie was a good student, both academically and as a person. And so he drove to Baton Rouge to ask her what was going on. And she told him, she said, "Daddy, I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared for college, academics, and I'm struggling." But she reassured her father that she would definitely finish college, which she did. Fannie graduated from Southern University, went on to teach for 30 years. 9 years later, Mr. Moore, after wondering what he could do to change things, finally filed a suit on May 3rd, 1965, and that's where the case started from there. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Ms. Moore, do you recall when he first filed that suit?
Yes, I do. Well, that was in May 3rd, 1965. My father filed it. He told us the reason he filed it. And on July the 4th, 1965, shots rang out in our home. And at that time, my daddy got all of us to make sure we were safe and not harmed. He got all of us, and my mom, while my daddy was seeing that we were safe, my mom crawled through grass and through the bushes to go to the neighbor next door because our phone lines were cut. We had no way of getting out. So my mom, and she's very brave, and she went through the bushes and went to the neighbor's house to call for help. And they called for the police, Hammond Police Department, and they still haven't come yet. And the next morning, the FBI came.
Did the Hammond Police Department ever answer the call?
No.
They never answered the call?
Never answered the call. The FBI got there the next morning. Okay, and my dad made a phone call, and he called someone, and we had men around there to guard the house, to protect us. And
How long they guarded the house? 24 hours?
24 hours a day to make sure that we were safe.
And that was kind of a dead-end street back there.
Yes, one way in and one way out.
Well, did your dad ever found out who was responsible for shooting the house?
Well, he said one day he was in the driveway and his car pulled up. And this man asked, "Are you MC Moore?" And he said, "Yes." He says, "I'm a born again Christian. And I was in the car that shot in your house, but I didn't do the shooting." And he asked him to forgive him. So he did.
He did. And this was white man that did the shooting?
Yes, it was a white man.
But he never did find out who.
He never did find out who.
Did the FBI ever find out anything?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
To my knowledge.
Well, Mr. Terry, that's your father-in-law, and which he has some great history behind himself there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is you all planning to do with the old home? Are the bullet holes still in the old home?
Yes, it is.
Still there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the bullet holes are still there. about 15 years ago, Southeastern University, they came out and did a segment on the Moore family, and they actually recorded and took pictures of the hole. And as of right now, we're sitting down as a family and we're discussing making the home a historical site.
What type of, what the building would become? If you get it to historical site, what would the old home would become?
It would become open to the public to where that they can come in and feel the history, because even though this has been 50 years, when you walk through that home, you still can feel the essence of Mr. and Mrs. Moore and the different things that they went through. And it's, as you look at those holes, it's amazing. There was a bed right there, right above, the bullet holes came right above a bed where the son, Jerry Moore, was sleeping. And miraculously, and God being on their side, he wasn't injured. But if he had raised up, he could have been seriously injured. 15 people in a home and someone shooting through the window, no one was injured. But the most amazing thing to me, Mr. Pons, about this event is that Mr. Moore received a call from one of the local priests. And he told me, he said, Mr. Moore, you don't have to keep sending your family through this. You don't have to deal with this intimidation. We will educate your children at the Catholic school. And Mr. Moore told him he appreciated the offer, but he wasn't doing it just for his children, but he was doing it for all children. And that's the thing about Mr. Moore, the courage and the love, because not many of us could have made that statement. We'd have been full of anger and trying to do our own investigation to find out who did the shooting. But he knew that that's not the call that God had put on his life, to fight violence with violence.
Did that hurt you all in school?
Yes, it did. Thelma was the first one to go. You know, they picked certain kids to go. Only they had an amount for them to go. So Thelma was the first one that went. I was at home. I had finished high school. I was at home, and some days she would play hooky, and I would hide her out in the house because she was under so much stress going and dealing with it.
But she was kind of afraid to go?
Yes.
Well, you all were still at Hammond High then? I mean, at Greenwood Park High?
Yes. I had just finished high school then. And, I was expecting my son. He'll make 50 years old this year. I was expecting him when the bullets rained out. And my dad was a strong man. He always protected us. He tried to protect us from things in life that would harm us, or just things in life about even dating. He was the one that if some guy would come to ask, could he court us? Back there in the days, they did that. My dad would sit up there and he would really inspect them.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break here.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
All right.
Stay with us. We're back. Thanks for staying with us. We're going to continue our conversation with Mr. Terry and Mrs. Jeanette Moore Terry about the 50th anniversary of her father and his father-in-law filing the desegregation case against the Tangipahoa Parish School Board.
Yes,
Mr. Terry, as you were saying?
Yes, Mr. Pons, as we look back in 1965, we noticed 1965 was a great year of history in our country, especially for African Americans, because the civil rights movement was at a boom and the federal government was forced to do something. So President Johnson decided to sign the Civil Rights Bill, enacted the Civil Rights Bill, which said that any school system that had a dual school system, meaning blacks in one place and whites in another, that the federal government would withhold money. So this opened a door for a lot of different desegregation suits, but the MC Moore case did not actually use the power of the Civil Rights Act. It actually used the power of the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, which guarantees each and every citizen's all of the equal protection and rights and privileges that the Constitution of our great country provides. So as he was looking at the education of all his children, and that he had to go to a school system where his two oldest sons, Willie and Jim, who were in the military, were paying taxes. Mr. Moore had paid taxes all of his life. His wife had paid taxes, his daughter Fanny. And he's saying, but my children are not getting the benefit in the educational system. They're being given a subpar educational system, and now is the time for me to do something. And that's when he stepped out on May the 3rd, 1965, to make sure that all of the remaining children would get a decent education so that they can go out into the world and be able to compete with other children on the same level. Getting old books with that would run down. The white kids already had the books for 7 or 8 years.
Yes, that was common back during that period of time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Where the black students or the black schools got the hand-me-down books with all the pages torn out, nowhere to write your name.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so it was just a disgrace.
It was a disgrace.
What it was that. Can you recall what type of work your dad did?
Yes, my dad owned pulpwood trucks, and he hauled pulpwood. And what happened is they put sugar in his tanks of his trucks, slashed his tires, and even when he got that fixed, his boss would send him into like swamp areas where he would get bogged down, and he couldn't do that very long. So after a while, by that being his only means of funds are working for us, he couldn't do that anymore. He couldn't afford to go in the swamps and get all bogged down. That meant no money that day. So my daddy had a friend, Mr.
J.K. Haynes.
J.K. Haynes.
Okay, J. King Hands, what is known now the J. King Hands Foundation.
Foundation, yes.
Okay.
He called him and he says, Mr. Moore, just tell me what you need. And he would got money from him in order for our house, everything could run good and for us to be taken care of.
How long did he do that?
Oh, God.
Were there other people contributing to the finance of the family?
Yes, there were other, Mr.
Walter Albritton
would take him different places that he needed to go. And Daddy belonged to different organizations. One was the Voters League, and they contributed.
Can you tell us something about the Voters League, Mr. Terry?
Yes, the Voter League was an organization started up by black leaders to kind of like interrogate the different people that were running for political office. And what they would do was ask them what was their platform. And even though Mr. Moore only had a third, fourth grade education, he had a persona that always gravitated people with great learning ability to him. And two of the questions that he would always ask would be, what are you planning to do for the elderly? What are you planning to do for the young people? Because, our system is messed up. And as we talk about that, one of the things that he did, there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Willie Richardson. I want to make sure I don't forget it. Mr. Willie Richardson worked at the Hammond High School. And whenever they would throw books away that was real good, he would bring these books and he would take these books and put them in the black schools. So some of the kids would have decent books with all of the pages. And he was a member of the Voters League, the Young Men's Pelican Club. And in 1955, Mr. Moore, Mr. Richardson, and a long list of black leaders at that time got together and were trying to get a black elected to the school board, Tangipahoa Parish School Board in 1955. So Mr. Moore's political life and his struggles in the community didn't start in 1965. He was already out front working. And the Voters League was a very, very important part of our history and struggles with the African Americans.
Yes, and my dad didn't just do it just for his kids. He did it for all children to have access to being able to have the education that they needed.
All the children was
all
his children.
Race, creed, or color. It didn't matter, but he did it for all.
And Mr. Moore had to, in order to support his family, he had to switch from logging and go in the kitchen with his wife, and they baked cakes and pies. And if you know anything about a Moore cake, I promise you, there's not a bakery in town that could compete with the cakes and pies that they made. And it humbled Mr. Moore. He became stronger, but yet he became more humble. And he wanted all children, and then he would invite children from the local schools like Pear Ridge, and that's in the immediate area of his home. And they would bring the kids by, and he would show them how to cook. And we have pictures at home with him in his chef hat and his little uniform on, and a large number of kids
Yeah,
around.
how long did he do that?
He did that actually the remainder of his life.
Oh.
Him and his wife did that the remainder of their life. His wife still worked in the public school, in the public. She started working at Hammond State School, and then years later he started working at Hammond State School as a foster grandparent. So Mr. Moore was involved in every area of the community. He helped people get jobs. People would get in trouble, and Mr. Moore, you could call him 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He would get out of his bed to go and help people with their children, especially when they had been put in jail for minor offenses. And he would stand on the front line for them, and he did this all of his life.
Okay, let's revisit when they was guarding his house. These was local people guarding his house, or they came in from out of town?
Well, we had a combination, actually. The Moore family was blessed to have a combination. They had gentlemen like Mr. Henry Reed, Mr. LaVaris Harvey, his brother, Mr. Spears, Mr. Henry Jackson Sr., who's the son-in-law for 56 years, Mr. Otis Broomfield. I mean, it was a great number of local people, but at the same time, the Deacons of Defense from the Bogalusa area also came and helped protect the Moore home. So they had Mr. A.Z. Young, people like that who were marching at that time, right down through the center of Hammond. These type people hung out at the Moore's home all the time.
Stay with us. We'll be back. Thanks for being with us. We're back. Can you talk about what has happened, the changes that have happened within 50 years?
Yes, Mr. Pons, there have been changes, but we realize that, the fight continues. And Mr. Moore was able to see Judge Rubin passing a ruling of 69-40, 60% white, 40% black. And this was the reflection of the population of Tangipahoa Parish. And that's what he based his 60-40 on. And he said that that's the way the school system should be. You shouldn't be able to walk on a campus anytime and be able to say this is a black campus or this is a white campus.
But we still have a problem existing 50 years ago. We still having teachers being fired, coaches being fired, and non-blacks being promoted to principals, supervisors, or head coaches. They've always been. So that problem is still with us. And in your opinion, based on the lawsuit, you think that would change any time in the immediate future?
Well, Mr. Pons, we have to do what we've been doing for 50 years. We have to keep working. We have to realize that we are all brothers and sisters, regardless to what color we are. And in the school system, like anything else, you're always going to have 1 or 2 bad apples trying to stop progress. But at the same time, there are a lot of great people of all colors in our community, and a lot of us do work together, hand in hand.
Miss Jeanette, got some events planning around your father. How you feel about those events?
I feel great.
Tell us about some of those events.
Okay, we're going to have a panel discussion. We're going to have church 6 o'clock Sunday at First Church of God in Christ on Campo Street. That's where my dad went to church. So we thought it would be more than, it would be fitting to have it there. And at the service,
Mr. Nelson Taylor.
Mr. Nelson Taylor will be the guest speaker there. And some of the family's going to sing. We're going to have spiritual dancing. We're just going to go and celebrate and have a good time. And I know this is what my father would want. and you know, for us to celebrate and to be at that church.
There are some other activities planned too, Mr. Terry. Tell us about those.
Yes, sir. There's some other activities planned. The family, as we sat down and started planning this 50th year celebration anniversary, we met some very lovely people. Miss Antoinette Harrell, who has been a great help to us. And one of the things we wanted was to have MC Moore Day. And we contacted the Tangipahoa Parish Council, and that's what we mean about things are changing. Without any argument, without a long discussion, they unanimously said that May 3rd is MC Moore Day annually. And that's just a big event. And we just wish, we know that Dad is looking down and Mrs. Moore is looking down, and they're so happy. We also have, as my wife said, on Sunday, we'll be celebrating with a worship service at 6 p.m. The lead attorney, Mr. Nelson Taylor, is the lead attorney of the Joyce Moore versus Tangipahoa Parish suit. He will be the main guest speaker. On Monday, we'll be back at First Church at 6 p.m. It's located here in Hammond on Campo Street. The pastor is Superintendent Tate, and we'll have a panel discussion. We're going to have about 10 people, and we'll have two of the guards that guarded the house in 1965, Mr. Henry Jackson and Mr. Otis Broomfield. And then many of the Moore family. People will be able to see and hear and put faces with the name, and they're going to share their story. And so it's just going to be a wonderful time. And it's a celebration that we know is deserving, and will be on television in New Orleans. And we just want to thank you for, inviting us to be on your show and all the things that you do, Mr. Pons, in our community. We really thank you.
You have some other things planned too that you mentioned. That will all your the Moore Day every year. It's going to be some different activities.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. There'll definitely be different activities. Some of the things that we have on the drawing board, we are planning to have putting together a play by one of the great-grandsons, Isaiah Hughes, of Mr. and Mrs. Moore. He's going to put together a play. We're looking at doing a book. And we know that restoring the house will be a big project to make it a historical site for the public to come and see. We also working with the African American Museum with Mr. Delmus Dunn. We received different plaques. And like I say, that proclamation is the start of everything. But the official date will actually be May 3rd.
Yes. Have you ever thought about maybe trying to get that a historical marker in that area for Mr. Moore?
Yes, sir. That did come up, and what we're going to do is step by step. That hopefully we'll get that done before the end of the year, and get a marker somewhere in the city of Hammond is what we're looking at.
Okay. Now, in restoring the Moore house, you are going to have some artifacts in there from the family, from Mr. Moore and his.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
There will be artifacts of their belongings, and a lot of the furniture. Some of the furniture is in storage.
Okay.
One of the daughters has a lot of furniture, and then there's a lot of furniture that was placed in some of the children's home. So as we do the historical site, those different cabinets or whatever will be placed back into the home, so that people can see all the things and how the Moore home is close to what it was in 1965 as possible.
They'll also see how they lived.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They will be amazed how Mr. and Mrs. Moore could raise 15 children, and not one time did they ever say the kids are getting on my nerves. They never said anything like that, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah. You all said you had a book plan and a play. Is any time soon will that play be ready?
We're looking at we got a set date for maybe Black History Week of 2016 on the play. But if Mr. Hughes can get it together sooner, then sure, we'll definitely invite the public in to see the play, because we know he's a very talented young man, and we know it's going to be wonderful. And the family will be they won't look as young as they did in 1965, but hopefully we can get most of the family, the girls and the boys, to actually play their parts in the play.
Well, we don't hear too much about your mother. What else did she do besides get there and get some help?
Okay. My mother was a wonderful woman. She ran the house, which was a big part while Daddy worked, and she didn't work until later on in in the public. But we knew when she told us to do something, you better be on your way to do it. And like he said, she baked cakes. My mom, even though they had 13 children, not in this house, but before, my mom and my mom's sister got killed, and they took on their 3 children and raised them. And then I had an uncle had to come and live with us. I mean, can you imagine that many people in one house besides theirs? And my mother was always doing something for someone. She would tell us, if you hold your hold your hand tight, nothing can come in, nothing's going out. So she was productive in the home. We had peas to shell. My dad had his farm, garden peas. My dad would even raise sweet potatoes. Back then, they could put them in the dirt and cover them up, and it still would be good. That was a preserving of the earth.
Okay, this is all. We don't have any more time. We're out of time. Thanks for watching The Ed Show. I'm your host, Ed Pons.